Hello everybody, my name is Farmer Phil, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the oldest shed in our yard. This shed here, which we were looking at the other day. Now, the turf shed may be older, or some of the turf shed may be older, but that's a turf shed. This is a cattle, well, was a cattle shed. So we're going to have a look at this. We're going to go back in the history of it. The shed is, I was just talking to Father Phil before I was doing this video, just to make sure I got everything that I'm going to say as right as I can, is over 100 years old, this shed here. I know it'd be better hearing it from the horse's mouth, either my father or my uncle, but my father Phil is away rolling barley, and my uncle is still in hospital, but he's going to be home by the weekend. So all's good with him. He's in great form. Everything is good. But anyways, yeah, I am a tiny little bit stuck for a video. I have 4 videos in the making at the minute, which I'll have for over the next couple of videos, but I didn't get one ready. I was hoping I'd have one ready for today, but complications made things that I couldn't get it done, because things turned out to be harder done than they were supposed to be. But anyways, we're going to look at this shed. As in the last video I done, a lot of people asked, what is the story of this shed, what's the history behind this shed? So I'm going to go through it. So this shed here is a stone cemented shed. You can tell yourself it is quite rough and ready. The shed is over 100 years old. It is 100 foot long, and it was built by a relation of ours back in the late 1910s, early 1920s is when this shed was built. A little bit of the farm history. So the man that built this shed and also done the turf shed, or built some of the turf shed, this is the masonry work on the two, or the cement work on both sheds is very similar, with the exception of the stonework. So the man that built these sheds was an Australian man, and he come back to Europe to fight in World War I, and his mother told him when he was in Europe to come back to Ireland to come to farm the land that his aunts owned. And so he did, and he built this shed. And what he done at the time, he was a pig farmer, and that's what he done. So at the minute the shed is all divided. Every concrete pillar has a division in it. My grandfather done that, but originally the shed was just one big long shed with the concrete pillars all the way to the bottom. And the man that was farming at that time, he farmed pigs. He was fattening pigs, and the meal used to arrive by canal. Yes, by canal. That time there was no lorries, it was horse carriage, canal and rail. And the bags of meal had to be hauled out of the boats in the canal and then brought up to feed the pigs. During the 1920s there was a thing called the economic war between Britain and Ireland, after Ireland gained its independence from Britain, and that broke him, and he ended up, to settle his debt, buy a ticket back to Australia. He mortgaged this farm that we're on now, and it was my great grandfather then. He was related, I think now it was a cousin. The man who farmed this was a cousin of my great grandfather's, and my great grandfather's 2 aunts were living on the farm at the time, and he squared off the debt. He paid for the mortgage, and in doing so he quintessentially bought the farm. And my grandfather then moved here in 1938, 3rd of March 1938. He came with a cart, a plough, a bag of oat seeds, a horse and a donkey is what he come to the farm with. And we've been here since, and that's how we come to own this farm, because the man that was farming it wanted to get back to Australia, and he basically sold the farm to buy the ticket to get back. But that's what this shed was originally built for, and that was its purpose. Now I'll insert a picture here of an aerial view of the farmyard from sometime in the 1940s. I can't remember when. It could be 1945 or 1947. I can't remember, but in the 1940s. And it just give you an idea of what the farmyard was like back then. Well, anyways, to bring it up to more modern terms, or my grandfather's time, he put in the walls dividing each individual pillar, and these were his cattle sheds. Going forward again, could be 10 years ago, we got them all replastered, and we tidied up we tidied up all these pens. They're of no use to us now for anything other than really, as you can see yourself, machinery, vintage machinery storage, as low roof, can't get with the teleporter, can't get in with anything. The last time we used to use them for, we used to put in cows and calves. So if you had a cow a calf that wasn't sucking a cow, back when we had the sucklers and the dairy, they were put in there, and that's what that was used for. But we had a skid steer that we could clean them out. But when we got the teleporter, we no longer use these for cattle because you can't clean them out. So it's storage. That's what it's used for. The other thing that I know people keep asking about is the milking parlour. As I keep saying, we used to milk cows. Well, this is the milking parlour, what's left of it, and it is a kip, because everything's kind of just gets dumped into it. So 6-a-side parlour with single clusters, fairly, I suppose in nowadays terms, it was fairly it's fairly rudimentary. But so we finished milking in 2004 because we lost 32 of the 42 cows we were milking at the time to TB in the one test. It was the one test took 32 cows. We had to quit. Once you got locked up with TB, if you were to buy back replacements, the replacements, if they went down with TB, you wouldn't get compensated on them. So it wasn't worth the risk of buying in cows to try and keep milking for fear we would lose them. And we were locked up with TB on and off for 8 years. So it was probably a good thing that they didn't, because they'd have broke themselves trying to keep milking and keep buying cows to keep producing milk. The reason why there was such an outbreak of TB was because the bog, which is just right beside us, the other side of the canal, oftentimes you'll see it in some of the drone footage. That bog, there was a massive bog fire in 2003, and that drove the badgers out of the bog and into the land, and that spread the TB. And just on a little side rant at the minute, that bog at the minute is in for re-wetting, rewilding, and as one of the side effects I can see happening is they're going to drive the badgers and wildlife out of the bog, especially any of the burrowing wildlife. As the water levels rise, it's going to flood their dens, and it's going to drive them out of the bog, drive them back into the land, and it's going to probably spread TB all over again, and we're going to face into another decade of battling TB. So that's something to look forward to, and that's one of the consequences of all these good intentions. There's always side effects. But that's my rant over. But anyways, this is the milking parlour. Has been used since 2004. Have we any plans to do anything with this? No, we don't know what to do. We were thinking at one stage of converting it into a calf shed when we were still on feeding on buckets, but when we went to Domac feeder, it just didn't make any sense. So at the minute, it's just idle. It's a walkway up to what used to be. So this bit here was built on then when the milking parlour was added, and this is where the bulk tank used to be. But we took out the bulk tank and we converted it into a chemical store and a medicine store. So we stay compliant. A little bit of a mess in there, needs to be tidied. Up here then, that was the stables. Prior to us making the stables, I'm not sure what it was used for. It could have been used as the stables in my grandfather's time, but when my sisters got horses, they turned that into a stables, and it's also full of crap, because at one stage that's where all the rubbish gets put till we're ready to go bring it to the waste. In here, which is another tip, there's no other way of saying it, this was the tractor house. Still is called that tractor house. In my grandfather's time, this was the workshop. This is where all the work was done on the tractors. That's where the tractors were parked. I think at one time he used to have 3 20s parked in there and the 35s. And my father was telling me when he was working the 20s, every Saturday he serviced them, changed all the oil. Every Saturday changed oil in the 20s. And that's where all that was done. But of course, over the years, things just get dumped into it, and it is an area that we were to tidy out, and a lot of it is to go to Wilton's recycling. But yeah, it's somewhere we want to get tidied out and sorted. The next shed up is the hen house, and it has always been a hen house, or it has been a hen house for a very, very, very long time. So this side was more at the, oh jeez, there's a hen up there. You shouldn't be up there, Mrs. Go on down. So this is all a hen house. I mean, me granny's time, she used to keep hundreds of hens to sell eggs, and still is the hen house. Could do it, putting in more stuff up there, but these are my hens that I have, and guineas. So there's an outside run. Nest boxes are still the same from my granny's time, along with the roost. All is still the same, and these are my fancy fowls, or some of them anyways, and the guinea fowl at the back. That's that. So then the end shed here, which is another kip at the minute, because as with most of the place, anything where there was space to throw stuff in, it got thrown in. This is the crushing house, or was known as the crushing house. You can see, you can just about see at the very back there, there's an old mill and grind wheel. Back in my grandfather's day, and even up until my father's day, my father remembers working that, but my grandfather he was a very industrious man, and he used to have a sawmill, and he had the grinding, and he was contracted, he was doing a lot of things. But every Tuesday and Thursday used to be milling day, and all the neighbours would come around with their 100-weight bags of barley, 100-weight bags of oats, and my grandfather would mill them for them. They grind them, mill them, whatever way they wanted it done. And my uncle spent many a year at that, my father spent many a year in there at that, and that's what that was used for. Now this area is going to be cleaned out hopefully next week, because we want to convert that into our potato storage and get it roller door, vermin proof, all of that. And that's one of the reasons why we still haven't dug the spuds, because as you can see, nothing has happened with it yet. That is this end of the shed, so we'll go down to the other end of the shed. 100 years standing there, or over, it's around 100 years. And again, with the story I told in the last video, you can see the dent in the roof there. And just for anyone who missed that in that video, the dent in the roof, the story I was told was the county council were blasting stone out of what we call the quarry field, which was, I suppose at one time was the other side of the crush, or the wall of the crush. We're blasting rocks during the war, or World War II, and a big rock or a stone come up and hit the roof and put the dent in it. Anyways, so around here then that's our water tank for spraying. But in here, I may actually have to go around the other side. We're getting ready to put the geese in here. So we are in the next part over from the milking parlour, which this is the buyer, or was a buyer. When I got into me fancy fowl when I was a teenager, we cut out the stalls and I converted it into a bit of a hen house. So I have call ducks, I have gold Brahmas here, I have Polish, and I have a silky. So they're the guys with half rows. And then I have Wyandottes, Rhode Island Red, and I have Barbadoo Anvers, I think they're. But so yeah, I converted this shed into a kind of a breeding pen for bantams at that time. But this was the buyer. This was where I suppose the cows were milked before the milking parlour was put in. And there used to be, you can actually still see them. You can see it under this one here. So you can see the bar there. So there used to be a bar come up and went that way, and there was these here chains and stalls, so they were for tying the cows to for when you were milking them. And when they moved over the milking parlour, when they built the new milking parlour and they moved the milking over there, this was then used for feeding calves. So what they used to do was, so can I get into it? No, I can't really get into it, but through these two doors here, there's one at either end, into the next part of the shed, where the last part where the roof is down. So the calves, so when we were milking cows, all the dairy calves were kept out there. And instead of milking cows and then trying to feed calves, what they done was they brought in cows in here, tied them into the stalls, and then they let the calves in to drink off the cows. And that's how they fed the dairy calves. So you imagine every cow that was in here had 4 teats. So there was 4 calves for every cow, and that's how they fed the calves out of this shed. And then the last part of the shed, I can't really get in this one, I'll have to go back out. So then this end shed is used to store the whole crop header, and again, anywhere where that's not really in main use tends to gather rubbish. But then this shed here was this was I suppose a main bit of a cattle shed. So it was. So to give you an idea, you can see the big concrete pillars. So that's what was there, used to be just in this shed, and then they put in the wall. But anyways, this was used for housing cattle, and there is up this end of the shed, you can see it there, what's left of it. There's a trough. So the hay was in the hay shed there. So the hay was quite literally just pegged from there into these mangers here to feed the cows. And that's quite literally what was done, and that was the same there. But unfortunately, one of the timbers gave up on the roof here, and we need to get it sorted and put back up the sheeting. The sheeting, for being 100 years old, you can see yourself there, I don't see much daylight. It's amazing, absolutely amazing. That sheeting is so old, yet it hasn't rusted through, whereas we replaced the roof on a shed last year that was up 20 years and we had to replace the roof. Quite amazing, so it is. Now some of the sheeting is gone, but it's not that bad. But anyways, that is really it. There's not much else to show or say about this shed. 100 years old. Have we any plans to do anything with it, major or change it? Or I suppose some people would say, why don't you knock some of it and put up a more useful shed? We don't have any plans. It's 100 years old. It's part of the heritage of the yard, and it's part of the yard dynamic, and I can't see us ever doing anything with it. We were debating maybe knocking this end and doing something with putting up another baby cattle shed, but no, I don't think we will. The biggest thing we want to do, as we said in the last video, is get these two areas here into pens that we could put in our cattle that would be going to the factory in there the night before they're due to go, so that it makes our lives a little bit easier when it's in the mornings, not having to try and sort cattle in the dark of the morning. But anyways, look, I don't think there's much else to say. That is the shed, 100 years plus standing there, and it's going to be there, probably outsee all of us. But anyways, I'm going to leave it at that for today's video. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Maybe not the most interesting video in the world, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. A little bit of the farm history, how we came to own the farm too, and the shed, the oldest shed in the yard. But anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. Sunday's video will be a good video. We've pulled out a machine and are getting it going. That was the delay why I didn't have a video for today, was because this machine just gave us a little bit more issues than was originally thought it would. But Sunday's video, there will be a machine running again that hasn't been running in a very, very long time. Anyways, I'm going to leave it at that. As always, please like and subscribe to the channel. Videos every Tuesday, Thursday and Sunday. That is it from me. Good luck.